The night I accidentally overheard my wife whispering on the phone changed everything I believed about love. I had returned home early from work after a canceled business meeting and quietly walked toward the kitchen, expecting to surprise Emily with flowers I had bought on the way home. Instead, I heard her laughing softly as she said, "2 more weeks, and everything he owns will be mine. He'll never see it coming." My heart froze. I stayed perfectly still, afraid even my breathing would expose me. She wasn't speaking with a friend. She was talking to a lawyer and then to another man. Every dream we had built together suddenly felt like a carefully designed trap, and I realized I needed to discover the truth before making a single move. For the next several days, I acted exactly as I always had. I smiled over breakfast, kissed her goodbye before work, and pretended nothing had changed. Inside, however, every word she spoke sounded fake. I quietly met with an experienced attorney who advised me to remain calm and document everything instead of reacting emotionally. We reviewed our finances, confirmed which assets legally belonged to me before our marriage, organized important records, and protected them according to the law. My lawyer reminded me that panic destroys good decisions. If Emily truly planned to deceive me, the truth would eventually expose itself without me breaking the law or creating unnecessary drama. Soon the evidence became impossible to ignore. One evening, while Emily showered upstairs, a message appeared on the family tablet connected to her phone. It wasn't a romantic text. It was a conversation about hiding spending, deleting financial records, and filing for divorce as quickly as possible. Another message discussed expensive vacations she had secretly taken with someone she called the future. My stomach twisted with pain, but I refused to let anger control me. I photographed everything legally available to me, shared the information with my attorney, and carefully stored copies. Every new discovery hurt, yet each one also strengthened my determination to face reality with patience instead of revenge. The following week felt like living beside a stranger. Emily suddenly became unusually kind. She cooked my favorite meals, suggested romantic weekends, and constantly asked whether I planned to make any major investments soon. She even encouraged me to sell a piece of family property that had belonged to my late father. That request confirmed my fears. My attorney advised me not to sell anything or sign new financial documents. Instead, we ensured every account, investment, and legal record accurately reflected ownership and proper documentation. I wasn't hiding money. I was simply making sure everything was transparent, lawful, and impossible to misrepresent later in court. Exactly 2 weeks later, Emily placed divorce papers on the dining room table with a confident smile. She expected me to panic, beg her to stay, and agree to every demand simply to save the marriage. Instead, I calmly accepted the documents, thanked her for being honest at last, and told her my attorney would respond soon. For the first time since our wedding day, her confidence cracked. She watched me leave the room without shouting or arguing. I could almost see the questions racing through her mind. Why wasn't I fighting? Why wasn't I terrified? She had prepared for emotional chaos, but she had never prepared for quiet confidence. The legal process moved much faster than Emily expected. During the first settlement meeting, her attorney confidently presented a long list of demands. Then my attorney calmly presented years of documented financial records, proof of separate property, clear ownership documents, and evidence showing that many of the assets Emily expected to receive legally belonged to me long before our marriage. Every document had been organized before she filed. Nothing had been hidden. Nothing had been transferred illegally. Everything had simply been properly documented. I watched Emily's expression slowly change from confidence to confusion as her expectations began collapsing one page at a time. A few days later, an even bigger surprise arrived. The messages I had legally preserved revealed that Emily had secretly accumulated large personal debts without my knowledge. Luxury shopping, hidden credit cards, and expensive gifts purchased for another man had created financial problems she assumed would disappear after the divorce. Instead, those debts remained connected to her alone. Her attorney quietly explained that the court would likely view many of those expenses as personal obligations. Emily looked stunned. The perfect future she had imagined suddenly became filled with financial pressure she never expected to face alone. As the weeks passed, rumors spread among our friends. Most had believed I was the selfish husband who had somehow driven away a loving wife. But when facts slowly became known, people realized how carefully I had handled everything. I never insulted Emily publicly or shared private details online. I simply answered questions honestly when asked. Several mutual friends admitted they had noticed strange behavior but never imagined she had been planning everything for months. Their support reminded me that dignity often speaks louder than revenge. Keeping my integrity intact became far more satisfying than winning any argument. One rainy afternoon, I returned home to find Emily sitting on the front steps with tears running down her face. She looked exhausted, nothing like the confident woman who had proudly served me divorce papers weeks earlier. She quietly admitted that the man she had trusted had disappeared the moment he realized she wasn't receiving the fortune he expected. Her debts were growing, her future felt uncertain, and she finally understood the damage her choices had caused. Looking directly into my eyes, she whispered, "I made the biggest mistake of my life. Please give me another chance." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. I remembered our wedding day, our first home, our shared dreams, and every promise we had once made. Part of me wanted to believe her apology. Another part remembered the late-night phone call that had started this nightmare. Trust, once broken so completely, cannot be rebuilt with tears alone. I gently told Emily that forgiveness and reconciliation were not the same thing. I truly hoped she would rebuild her life, learn from her mistakes, and find peace. But I could never return to a marriage built on lies, hidden plans, and betrayal. Months later, the divorce was finalized peacefully. I kept working hard, focused on rebuilding my future instead of reliving my past. I traveled, reconnected with old friends, and finally found the quiet happiness I had forgotten was possible. The house felt different without constant suspicion hanging over every conversation. I learned that protecting myself legally had never been about defeating Emily. It had been about respecting myself enough to face betrayal wisely instead of emotionally. Every sunrise reminded me that sometimes losing the wrong person creates space for the right future to finally begin. Looking back, I realized the greatest victory was never money, property, or legal documents. It was discovering my own strength before bitterness consumed me. Emily once believed she could leave with everything I had built, but she never understood that my greatest asset was my character. Wealth can disappear. Houses can be sold. Investments can rise and fall. Integrity, patience, and self-respect are far more valuable because no one can steal them. As I closed the final chapter of that painful marriage, I walked toward a new life with confidence, grateful that the truth had arrived before it was too late.